Bumblebees It's an honor for me to welcome you to the featured keynote presentation of the St. Mary's Student Leadership and Social Justice Conference. The theme of today's conference and title of Dr. Cornel West's lecture is Prophetic Imagination, Confronting the New Jim Crow and Income Inequality in America. Conference attendees have spent the entire day engaging in critical conversations connected to the theme. Dr. Cornel West's visit to St. Mary's is sponsored by several schools, offices, departments, and committees noted in your program. They include the Catholic Institute for Lasallian Social Action, College Committee on Inclusive Excellence, Cummins Institute for Catholic Thought, Culture, and Action, Disney Forum, Intercultural Center celebrating 10 years, Kalmanovitz School of Education, Mission and Ministry Center, Social Justice Coordinating Committee, School for Economics and Business Administration, School for Liberal Arts, and the Theology and Religious Studies Department. This afternoon's presentation will be 90 minutes, including a 30-minute question and answer period, which is an essential part of the program. Dr. West will be signing books following the Q&A. His latest book, Black Prophetic Fire, is on sale in the lobby. Out of respect for our guest speaker and to limit any interference with our sound system, please do not use your phone to send text messages or to take photographs during the presentation. Please silence all electronic devices at this time. Thank you. I would now like to invite the president of St. Mary's College of California, Dr. James Donahue, to introduce Dr. Cornel West.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to St. Mary's College. Today is an important occasion for St. Mary's College. It's a day that represents the core and the best of what St. Mary's College stands for. I am thrilled and proud of our leadership conference that Ryan just indicated, the Conference on Social Justice, focused on the prophetic imagination. I am deeply, deeply honored to welcome here today someone who has been one of my own personal heroes in my life as a Christian theologian, Dr. Cornel West. At the heart of my core beliefs is that universities, and indeed St. Mary's College, is a place where the essence of our conversations must be about things that matter. These are reflected in our curriculum, in our conversational give and take, in what we prioritize as important, in our institutional and personal decisions, and our policies. St. Mary's College is about conversations that matter, and this is why today is so important. This conference is about things that matter, about social justice, about the common good, about income inequality, about the issues of incarceration and the racial, gender, and power dynamics of incarceration in this country, and about prophetic witness. These are indeed things that matter, and I'm so grateful for the organizers of this conference to have put this together. These issues are at the core of what we are about here at St. Mary's. Our identity is one that is steeped and committed to our Catholic tradition, our Catholic identity, our Lasallian heritage, and the Lasallian tradition and the role of the Christian Brothers play and have played in the life of St. Mary's College, and in our liberal arts tradition, where we focus on big questions about meaning, purpose, and value. What is meaningful, what is purposeful, what is valuable. These are the core of what a liberal arts tradition addresses. We could not ask for a more appropriate present to assist us in addressing these important questions than my good friend, Dr. Cornel West. Cornel West is a prominent and provocative, as you will find out, public intellectual in the democratic tradition. He's a professor of philosophy and Christian practice at Union Theological Seminary, one of the great centers of theological learning in our country, and professor emeritus at Princeton University. He's also taught at Yale and Harvard and the University of Paris. Cornel West graduated magna cum laude from Harvard in 3 years and obtained his MA and PhD in philosophy at Princeton. He is a prolific writer and as well as edited a number of influential texts. Best known perhaps for his classic works, Race Matters, Democracy Matters, and his recent memoir, Brother West, Living and Loving Out Loud. His most recent publication, which we have in the back, Black Prophetic Fire, highlights 6 revolutionary of African American leaders and examines the impact they have had in their own eras and across the decades. Professor West is, as a public intellectual, appears frequently in the popular media. You have probably seen him on the Bill Maher Show, the Colbert Report, CNN and C-SPAN, as well as his dear brother Tavis Smiley's show on PBS TV. He made his film debut in The Matrix and was the commentator with Ken Wilber on the official trilogy released in 2004. He has also appeared in over 25 documentaries and films, including Examined Life, Call and Response, Sidewalk, and Stand. Last, he has made 3 spoken word albums, including Never Forget, collaborating with Prince, Jill Scott, Andre 3000, Talib Kweli, KRS-One, and the late Gerald Levert. His spoken word interludes were featured on Terence Blanchard. We already had a brief conversation about jazz and have very, very many shared interests on Terence Blanchard's album Choices, which won the Grand Prix in France for the best jazz album in 2009. The Cornel West Theory's Second Rome, Raheem DeVaughn's Grammy-nominated Love and War masterpiece, and most recently on Bootsy Collins' The Funk Capital of the War masterpiece. I never quite thought that I'd be up here as president of St. Mary's College talking about Bootsy Collins, but I'm really glad. I'm really glad that I am. Because music and jazz and funk are something that's very dear to me, and we already have had this conversation. I mentioned that Cornel West has been a great hero to me. And of the many things that he has delivered and given, the one that stands at the core for me is Cornel West knows how to speak truth to power. And for that, Dr. West, I personally am very grateful to you, and we are deeply honored that you are here today with us. Thank you for being here.
For me to be at St. Mary's College. one of you for deciding to spend some time with me. I'm here to learn and listen, but I hope I say something that unsettles you and that unnerves you, maybe even for a moment unhouses you. I want to salute the captain of the ship, my new friend, my dear brother. We've spent many times in professional societies, but it's good to actually get a chance to talk with him. President James Donahue, give it up for Brother James Donahue. So it's very rare you have a college president that can say Talib Kweli. He had flow in the pronunciation of the name. Appreciate that. No, he and I have a deep John Coltrane connection. You turn to his internet and you see Blue Train. John Coltrane, a love supreme. Oh my God, nobody like him. He's got a blessed grandchild who calls him Papa Train. And I say, that's serious business. You, Papa Train, that means you on the love train. You own the justice train. My God, that sets some high standards. All of us fall short, but we aspire to it because we know where the landmarks really are. I want to acknowledge the student leaders who brought us together. I know they worked so very hard. Student leaders, please stand. Student leaders, stand. There they are, there they are. Stand, we thank you, we thank you. All day, New Jim Crow. Wealth inequality, income inequality, losing sight of those France Fanon called wretched of the earth. How wonderful indeed. And I'm just so very blessed. I'm just in many ways overwhelmed by those who have come for this moment. Because you see, no matter how high people may think I have achieved, believe me, the greatest honor I've ever had in my life is to be the second son of the late Clifton West and the living Irene West. And Irene West is here, my beloved mama. Stand, my friend. Nobody like her. I'm telling you the truth now. Oh, you think I'm somebody? Spend a little time with Irene West. Not we got an elementary school named after her, Irene B. West Elementary School in Sacramento, California. But it's the quality of person that she is. And that goes far beyond whatever skill or technique, far beyond whatever educational level you attain. It has to do with who you are in the midnight hour. Whether you're serious about being a loving person, a compassionate person. And I was blessed to have that early love injection. And it was a gift that I did not deserve. And I don't deserve it now. And then I was blessed to have the most Christ-like, Coltrane-like male, along with my beloved father, Clifton West Jr., and my brother, Clifton West III. He's here sitting next to Mom. Stand up, Cliff. Stand up, Cliff. Stand up, Cliff. Nobody like him. Nobody like him. I mean, people who read my memoir, Brother West, Living and Loving Out Loud, they were saying, we want the dark side of your family. We know the Freudian analysis is such there had to be all this tension and all this Oedipus complex. Got the wrong Negro. No, not in the West Clan. Of course we had tension. Of course we had frictions. But my God, it just overflowing. And then it was connected to Shiloh Baptist Church with a legendary pastor named Willie P. Cook. And he was the kind of pastor who he took care of the building fund. He would do all the work on the building in his ministry for poor people. And the elderly was at the center of it. How rare that is these days. Willie P. Cook, Shiloh Baptist Church, connecting that love so I had something to fall back on. And despite that, I still was a gangster. Until I met Jesus, and now I'm a redeemed sinner with gangster proclivities. Gangster memories. And then there was a friend, a companion of Willie P. Cook. He's one of the greatest prophetic pastors, one of the greatest prophetic figures, not just in the Bay Area, but in this country. He's a pastor of Allen Temple on the chocolate side of Oakland. He's an intellectual, but he's part of the same love train, justice train, and he happens to be here, Reverend Dr. J. Alfred Smith. Oh, yes, indeed, there he is. And I still get the telephone calls. It's just keeping me on track with that unbelievable love, support, critical engagement. And you can see why someone like myself knows that I'll never be 1/3 of the persons of Irene and Clifton and J. Alfred. But y'all don't know their full stories. I'm just a little bit more visible. That's all. And that's where you start when you're talking about justice and love. But then it goes on down the family tree. We got Erica West, who's the beloved daughter of Clifton, as well as Phyllis. We love them so much. And then we got the daughters of the daughter. Deja, towering artist that she is. Sister Ronnie. Where's Sister Ronnie? Oh, there she is. Magnificent, brilliant sister. Brother Sean as well. This is a special moment, you all. In Moraga, huh? Is that how you pronounce it? Moraga? Who would have thought? In Moraga, California, in the hills, there would be this kind of Kairos moment for me coming from 122nd Street in Harlem. Oh, yes. I know David D's in the house too somewhere though, isn't he? Where's David D? Oh my God, stand up, brother. What a freedom fighter this brother is. Connected to the culture and the music, telling the truth. Lord, Lord, I can go on and on. You can see I'm in no rush today. No, I don't have to be on the plane till 5:40 tomorrow morning. I'm on my way to Ferguson. We're going to have a mass demonstration. They're kind enough to ask me to say a few words. I'm going to bring up Sister Colette Flanagan to say something about her precious baby who was shot in Dallas a few years ago, Brother Clinton Allen. I'm going to bring up Sister Juanita Young. We were in Harlem together just 3 days ago. Magnificent sister whose son was shot down by the New York Police Department. There's going to be a mass demonstration on Sunday night. And on Monday morning, we're going to let the world know that there's many of us who are old school who have a deep love and care for the young, black, poor people, the children. We going to jail. We going to jail on Monday. We're going to try to fill the jails the way they fill the jails in Birmingham. We're going to keep love and justice at the center of it. We're going to fight back to hate and revenge, but we want the world to know the young folks, you're not in it by yourself. They may send you to decrepit schools and try to murder your soul, but you're not in it by yourself. Or they may have you deal with massive unemployment and act as if you are disposable and superfluous, but you're not in it by yourself. Oh, yes. They may convince you have less beauty and morality and less character, but you come from a tradition that says you can look that vicious legacy of white supremacy in the face and still learn how to love. You can learn how to love yourself, but you can also follow the great Martin Luther King Jr., who used to say, justice is what love looks like in public. And you can connect that love to a public sphere of bearing a witness and put pressure on the elites in power, not out of hatred, no, out of trying to make them accountable and answerable and responsible to act in such a way that the least of these, the weak and the vulnerable, ought to be center stage of what they do. That's the tradition. Frederick Douglass, W.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, Ella Baker, Malcolm X. Yeah, we got revolutionary Islamic brother in the mix. then Brother Martin. See, what Martin didn't add, and this is the addition to Curtis Mayfield. Justice is what love looks like in public, but tenderness is what love feels like in private. You see, I come from a tradition of a people who not only talk about justice, but also talk about militant tenderness and subversive sweetness and radical gentleness. So when Otis Redding sings, try a little tenderness, not say my name, say my name, say my name. That's part of the same love train. That's part of the same justice train. When Babyface says not Roni, but tender Roni. That's part of the same train. Do you know what it's like to be terrorized, traumatized, stigmatized for 400 years? Every authority telling you that you're less than human, and you still straighten your back up and you listen to a genius from Vallejo say, stand. You've been sitting much too long. There's a permanent crease in your right and wrong. Stand, there's a cross for you to bear. Things to go through if you're going anywhere. Stand, there's a midget standing tall and the giant beside him about to fall. His name is Sylvester Stewart Slidestone from Vallejo. The tenderness, the sweetness of a David Ruffin from Why Not, Mississippi, singing with the Temptations that says, if you follow my voice, you will feel an honesty there, a compassion there, but it also has a night side because it's dealing with scars and bruises and trying to transform and transfigure those scars and bruises into a sweetness, because that soul music is nothing but the sharing of a soothing sweetness against the backdrop of a dark catastrophe. And that's what I try to tell my young folk when I go into the studio and over again. Yes, here come Brother West, old school. That's right. That's right. And I'm bringing with me those voices of justice, Malcolm, Martin, Ida, but also the tenderness of the Delphonics, the dramatics, the whispers, the Jones girls, the emotions of Gladys Knight, of Aretha, of Mary Lou Williams, of the Thelonious Monk. That's a tradition full of prophetic fire. And it's a response to the 4 queries that the great W.B. Du Bois raised at the age of 83 years old. He's in handcuffs. The U.S. government has already tried to convict him and send him to jail for life. He's working with the Peace Information Center, which was simply an institution trying to ban nuclear weapons across the board, but he was viewed as an extension of a foreign agent of the Soviet Union. He had just married Sister Shirley Graham Du Bois on Valentine's Day, that 1951. 2 weeks later, he's in court. And he says, Shirley, how do I pass on this generation? How do I pass on the best of what we've tried to do to the younger generation? And he came up with an idea. He said, I'm going to write 3 novels. 80-some years old. Write 3 novels. And that first novel, called The Ordeal of Man's Art, you turn to page 275. Du Bois says, I've been wrestling with these 4 queries. And these are the questions I know that the precious students here have been wrestling with all day. The first question, how does integrity face oppression? How does integrity face oppression? Didn't say cupidity, didn't say venality, didn't say vapidity, integrity. You see. Second query, what does honesty do in the face of deception? What does it mean to attempt to be a person of integrity, a person who is just honest? Remember that last line in James Baldwin's preface to Notes of a Native Son? All I want to be is a writer and an honest man. And just aspiring to integrity and honesty will make you countercultural. especially in a market-driven society, obsessed with the 11th commandment, thou shalt not get caught. Especially with a highly commodified society that bombards each and every one of us, but especially our priceless young people, with weapons of mass distraction. And for Du Bois, integrity, honesty. And the third query, what does decency do in the face of insult? How you going to deal with attacks, assaults, insults? Can you hold on to your decency? Something's got to go inside of you. You've got to fall back on a tradition. You've got to fall back on memories. You've got to fall back on unbelievable courage to be willing to make that move from your mama's womb to tomb and say, I'm holding on to integrity. I'm holding on to honesty. I'm holding on to decency. And that last query, what does virtue do in the face of brute force? And this is very important, because in America we like to talk about race relations. I talk about vicious legacies of white supremacy. I don't believe in deodorized discourses. I don't believe in sanitized discourses. I don't believe in sterilized discourses. Human beings are made in the image and likeness of God. I know my brother from Lasallian tradition understand it. I got my own namesake, graduated from Christian Brothers right there in Sacramento. He got educated. Some say indoctrinated. No. That's genuine education going on. Paideia going on. The difference between education and schooling. You see, that's what I like about the Lasallian tradition. It's old school. It doesn't believe in market models for schooling. You just come in, get a skill, network, think highly of yourself, and gain access to a job so you can live in some vanilla suburb. No, that's not the Lasallian tradition. No. We're talking about paideia. Going back to Plato's Republic, how do you engage in that turning of the soul, that paragogy, that turning of the soul from the superficial, fleeting things to the substantial, enduring things? Not instant gratification and fleeting pleasures, but enduring joys and wrestling with the things that matter, as my dear brother Donahue said. Life, death, joy, justice, trust, fidelity, the things that matter, the things they will talk about when you are in your coffin. It won't be a story about how much money you made. It won't be a story about how big your mansion was. It won't be a story about how many material toys you accumulated. They got to say something about the things that matter with your body in that coffin before the worms get you. Oh, that's education at its deep level. And that's precisely what Du Bois was talking about. Do we have the courage to at least aspire to integrity, honesty, decency, virtue? Of course we fall on our faces. That great lapsed Protestant Samuel Beckett used to say, try again, fail better. Try again, fail better. We all fall short, no doubt. But as that Anglican W.H. Ardi used to remind us, do we have the courage to learn how to love our crooked neighbors with our crooked hearts? That's the raw stuff for any serious talk about justice. Reinhold Niebuhr's right. Any justice that is only justice soon degenerates into something less than justice. Justice is rescued by something deeper than justice, namely love. So let's move to paideia and education and related to these magnificent struggles that are escalating against the vicious forms of new Jim Crow, the prison industrial complex, as well as not just income inequality, but wealth inequality too. But let's start with Socrates. Turn to line 38a of Plato's Apology. The unexamined life is not worth living. And the Greek actually says not life for the human, We know our English word human derives from humando, which means burying. Humility too, tied to the earth, tied to the dust. And this fundamental question of what does it mean to be human? That's the most terrifying question we will ever raise as mortals made in the image and likeness of God. It's not a question about what kind of job you have. It's not a question about your career. It's not a question about how much money you have. It's not a question even about your educational attainment. It's a question about what kind of human being are you going to choose to be? What does it mean to be a featherless, two-legged, linguistically conscious creature born between urine and feces? That's who we are. Put on my three-piece suit as I want to and act like I'm so big and bad. But if it wasn't for Irene West's love push that got me out, I wouldn't be here. And it was, as Frankie Beverly would say, joy and pain for her. I won't ask for personal testimony, but I can understand. And it's true that one day my body very soon will be the culinary delight of terrestrial worms. People ask me why I spend so much time with the funk masters, George Clinton and Bootsy Collins and others. We all emerge in the funk. And we're on the way to the funk of the worms. And the question is, in that little short time, what kinds of choices and decisions will we make? And we are not imprisoned by the prevailing categories of gender and race and class and sexual orientation. They are real, no doubt. They have ugly forms of institutionalization, but we can break free and choose to be certain kinds of persons of integrity, honesty, decency, and virtue. And the question, what are the conditions under which people make those choices? And for me, not just prophetic imagination, but prophetic empathy and prophetic will, prophetic courage all go hand in hand. And you have to begin with tradition. Again, Lasallian tradition. You got to begin with tradition. No one can do it alone. One of the most vicious lies ever told in the history of American civilization is that we can be self-made. I guess you gave birth to yourself too, huh? Yeah, I've been working that out. Those 9 months were tough. Where'd you get your language from? Private language. I created, really. No, if you dream in English, you dream in the language of Shakespeare and Milton, Virginia Woolf, Toni Morrison, of James Baldwin. If you're dreaming in Spanish, you dream in the language of Cervantes, Marquez, and a host of others. If it's German, it's Goethe. It was in place before you made your entree. So self-made, gone. Secular myths about individual autonomy. It's a lie. It's not true. We can be free, but all freedom is under constraint. And you can be radically free, but radically free usually ties you to some kind of cause bigger than you to get outside of your egocentric predicament, to push back the hedonism, push back the narcissism, so that you become connected, coalescing with others who are lured by some grand vision, whatever utopian expression it has. If you're atheistic and agnostic, it could be integrity. And I know a whole lot of atheists and agnostics who are brothers and sisters of all colors of great integrity. My own greatest literary artist, Anton Chekhov, secular to the core. He's got more love in him than many Christian churches I know. And I'm not just talking about some of those mega churches that are mega church but don't have mega courage or mega love. But they got mega money. Got mega building funds. Okay. I see. All of us need money, of course. But When life is a gold rush, as the great Rabbi Abraham Joshua used to say, you end up worshiping the golden calf and you reduce the golden rule to the claim that those who have the gold rule. We back to Thrasymachus and Plato's Republic. Might makes right. Socrates struggling against it. How do we raise these issues of choosing to be a certain kind of human being? Well, you see in the history of this nation, one of the best examples, Frederick Douglass, Du Bois, Martin Malcolm, Ida, Ella, but we could go on, Fannie Lou Hamer, Stokely Carmichael, Diane Nash, Erica Huggins, Alice Walker. We could go on and on and on. We haven't even got to the musicians yet who set the highest standards. The highest standards. There is no intellectual analogous to John Coltrane or Billie Holiday. Why? Because they had a depth of courage as well as a depth of talent and genius that allowed them to transfigure their suffering and be free. And it's impossible to talk about movements of freedom unless you have already internally freed yourself in such a way that your very words and your witness is a foretaste of the freedom that you're talking about with others. That's precisely what Gandhi had in mind when he said, you got to be the change you talking about. You see, or the old folks used to put it, we rather see sermons than hear sermons. Oh, and that's where young folk are today. That's what we're going to talk about in Ferguson. They want to see sermons. Immanuel Kant has a wonderful moment, Critique of Pure Reason. I think it's about page 177 in the Norman Kemp Smith translation. And he says, examples are the go-kart of judgment. Examples are the go-kart of judgment. And you can say, yeah, Thomas the Kempis understood that a long time ago. Imitation of Jesus, imitation of God, which is a creative appropriation of a tradition with rich stories of a Palestinian Jew that emerges out of a legacy of Jerusalem that builds on the notion that to be human is to spread hesed, loving kindness to the widow, the fatherless, the motherless, the weak, the vulnerable. Love of stranger, 36 times invoked in Hebrew scripture. Love of neighbor, Leviticus 19:18. And that Palestinian Jew building on that rich prophetic Judaic tradition that says, yes, to be human in the face of all that comes at us, you see, is indeed to have the courage to love neighbor, and of course with Jesus, love enemy. You don't try that one on your own. You need a whole lot of grace for that. Pray for me. I'm working at it. But it's necessary. It's crucial. It's imperative because we don't want to trump anybody's potential. Everybody can grow, mature. And that's precisely why when we talk about forms of death like New Jim Crow, or you talk about the social catastrophe of poor people, what is it now? 22% of children in America live in poverty in the richest nation. The history of the world is a moral disgrace. Almost 40% of precious black, brown, red children live in poverty in the richest nation in the history of the world. That's an ethical abomination. Well, it's a form of death, psychic death, spiritual death. But to come back to St. Mary's College, students entering classrooms, the question is, are you willing to learn how to die in order to learn how to live, so you can become an exemplary figure who has a foretaste of freedom in who you are in your struggle for freedom vis-a-vis New Jim Crow, wealth, income, inequality. I say that to my students for the last 40, I've said that to my students the last 40 years. Every time they come in my class, oh, you come here to die. You come here to die. And they're looking at each other. I thought I came here for a B+, but I've been blessed to teach in prison for 37 years. I just finished my class at Rawway, 150 brothers, We read Plato. We read Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. We read Toni Morrison. And I told the brothers, you come in here to learn how to die. Because you're going to examine certain assumptions and presuppositions, and when you begin to give some of them up, that is a form of death. And there is no rebirth without death. There's no growth and development and maturation without death. And if you're not willing to critically examine who you are and allow something inside of you to die, then you're not ever going to be a freedom fighter. You might say certain words, you may act as if you are on the love train, but deep down you haven't engaged in that soul interrogation, that soul scrutiny that goes hand in hand with deep education. So when you graduate from St. Mary's, you look at each other and say, well, we all learned how to die pretty well, didn't we? Did you undergo that transformation? Did you undergo that metanoia? Did you undergo that kind of intellectual conversion? You came in with your set of dogma and you had to let some of them go, didn't you? And especially that dogma of white supremacy, but the male supremacy too, the anti-Jewish, anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, and the imperial identity, thinking that somehow American baby has more value than a baby in Yemen, has more value than a baby in Ethiopia, has more value than a baby in Guatemala. Yet that's got to die. Oh, you got to let it go. James Brown said, give it up, turn it loose. You got to let it go. To be what? To be able to straighten your back up. And Brother Martin used to say, what, anytime if folks straighten their backs up, they're going somewhere, because folk can't ride your back unless it's bent. And folk been walking around with bent backs for too long because they scared to learn how to die. America is a death-dying, death-ducking, death-dodging civilization. It's Disney World and Disneyland. It's all about fun, but nobody dies in Disneyland and Disney World. They just want to have fun. Well, there's Peter Pan. You can't be young forever. You can't be innocent forever. Sooner or later, catastrophe will come to your house. Sooner or later, darkness will cast some shadow in your own life. Then what you're going to do? And America has grown rich and grown wealthy, but has America grown up? That's the question. And that's the role of educational institutions at their best. It doesn't mean that educational institutions are not wrestling with that denial of death. Absolutely. We at Union wrestle with it. At Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, the white supremacist tradition is still operating. And I'm sure the legacy of white supremacy is still operating at St. Mary's. Ain't no doubt about that. And people say, well, Brother West, you should know about that. And the sky is blue. And grass is green. But it doesn't mean you don't fight against it. But you got to confront it. You got to hit it head on. You got to be able to think critically. You got to be able to speak candidly, like line 24a in Plato's Apology. The cause of my unpopularity, Socrates says, is parrhesia. Plain speech, frank speech, unintimidated speech, speech that's not afraid to say something against the grain, but to say it in such a way that's not just name calling and finger pointing, but it's an attempt to make people accountable as human beings and try to accent the best of who they are, but be honest about the worst and expect the same thing about oneself. You see, when I talk about white supremacy, I'm not talking about something outside. I'm talking about the white supremacy inside of me too. I'm a black man in America. You look in the souls of black people and you still see white supremacy operating, thinking that they're less beautiful, less intelligent, and less moral, because it's impossible to live in this civilization that's so deeply shot through with a legacy of white supremacy, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And you can see reaching out with our dear brother Barack Obama. Finally, we got some sense that we've gone beyond your racism. Get off the crack pipe. Get off the crack pipe. It's a breakthrough that we got a black president, absolutely so. It means that we got large numbers of vanilla brothers and sisters of great pricelessness who are less racist than their parents and grandparents. That's a beautiful thing. I don't give out moral prizes for white brothers and sisters who are less racist than grandmama and granddaddy on the vanilla side of town with some deeply xenophobic proclivity. I'm not talking about all white brothers. There's always been progressive white brothers. Oh, you got John Brown, you got Ann Braden, you got Miles Horton. But they got a whole lot of cousins. Oh, yeah. Oh, it makes Thanksgiving dinner very difficult. And you still got to love them. They got the image of God in them. But they got moral blindness, willful ignorance. And oftentimes their fears and anxieties have been shaped by deeply white supremacist perceptions. So when they see a Michael Brown, he's already a criminal. You see, he's somebody to control and contain. You see, when they see Brother Myers recently shot, South St. Louis, right around the corner where Donny Hathaway grew up. You see, right down the way from where Josephine Baker grew up. You remember Josephine left America, didn't she? You remember what she said when she left after that East St. Louis riot of 1917? She said, the very idea of America makes me shake and tremble and gives me nightmares. See, we need to incorporate her voice when we're talking about America. A lot of wonderful things about America, but she was dealing with American terrorism. You see, folk outside the United States have no monopoly on terrorism. Not at all. We asked our indigenous peoples about that. You see, 9/11, so many Americans talked about feeling unsafe, unprotected, subject to random violence, and hated for who they are. And I said, to be black in America for 400 years. Unsafe, unprotected, subject to random violence, hated for who they are. Oh, maybe we can learn something for people who have been on intimate terms with forms of death, the social death of slavery, the civic death of Jim Crow and Jane Crow, the psychic death of taught to hate yourself, told you have the wrong hips and lips and noses and hair texture and skin pigmentation, and then the spiritual death of just feeling as if you can't make it, you cave in. And we're seeing what, on a pervasive level now, the selling out. One of the reasons why we have the new Jim Crow is because we have a callousness toward poor people. So that the war on drugs was a war on poor folk, especially poor black and brown youth. It's been going on for 40 years, a quadrupling. You all went through all the data, but I'm trying to accent the moral and the spiritual dimension of it. The great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel used to say, what? Indifference to evil is more evil than evil itself. Great William James, probably the grandest and most gentle of all public intellectuals in the history of America. He said, indifference is the one trait that make the very angels weep. You see? Indifference, callousness. And this is my challenge to the black middle class. See, there once was a time when we had bourgeois Negroes who cared about poor Negroes. Du Bois was a bourgeois Negro after he'd gone to Harvard. In Berlin, Duke Ellington was a bourgeois Negro. Miles Davis was the son of a dentist of East St. Louis, another bourgeois Negro. Louis Armstrong, genius of geniuses, orphan, poor brother. But we had bourgeois Negroes who were willing to embrace across class, concerned about folk, no matter who they were, where they were. But we've witnessed now what I call the reniggerization of the black middle class. We got so many black middle class folk, you got prosperity, you got status, you got wealth, but they still walking around so scared and intimidated and afraid. Just like the niggerization that took place 150 years ago. Say, what you afraid of? Well, my career's in jeopardy. What you afraid of? Well, I don't want to be marginalized by folk who are in the mainstream. What you afraid of? Even Kanye West. The brother got so much flow on the stage, but he's standing up there. George Bush doesn't care about black people. Brother, what happened to your flow? The Negro's scared. That's all right. I love Kanye. Could be my cousin. But you got to remind folk You can't have a freedom movement for folk who don't speak their minds freely and willing to pay the consequences. And every figure in this book, from Douglas to Du Bois to Martin and Malcolm and Ida and Ellen, would say over and over again, death, where is thy sting? Grave, where is thy victory? If you're really willing to love and serve, already you have been given a gift of life. The least you can do is give your life back. That's the least you can do. It's a privilege to be able to speak freely and even have to give your life. And if you have a whole battalion of folk who are unwilling to pay the ultimate cost, then the status quo knows that. The powers that be know that. That's what happened in the 60s when you got a whole wave of artists, activists, intellectuals who said in the face of America's white supremacist order, we are willing to love, laugh, sing, and die for freedom. What you gonna do now? And what happened? They started shaking in their boots. Elites shake in their boots in every society. When you get people of integrity, honesty, decency, and virtue willing to live and die for something bigger than them. That's what we need. Now, I'm not saying that martyrdom is normative for everybody. Don't get me wrong. But somebody's got to be willing to love enough to die. And by that, I'm not just talking about physical death. But I'm talking about those other forms of death as well. That critical scrutiny, that falling in love with a person, just like when you fall in love with another person, right? Your old isolated self dies, and a new self emerges, entangled with another self. And you're walking around with a smile, at least for a while, until Sappho's bittersweet hunts you down. And if you're mature, you work that out. If not, God bless you and be with you. But you get my point. The centrality of love is not an abstraction. It's a steadfast commitment to the well-being of others, and it is precisely what needs to be talked about, embodied, enacted today. It is as old as can be. But it's also the one needful thing in a market-driven culture in which love itself is usually reduced to just manipulation. You see? Manipulation. And this is precisely where I think, by focusing on the new Jim Crow, you have to come to terms with legacies of white supremacy, because what black people have taught America and the world is, in the face of being such a hated people, here comes the love of Coltrane, Martin King, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder. In the face of such unbelievable, unjust conditions, teach America something about justice. You brag about your Constitution, but for 80-some years it was a pro-slavery document in practice. We're going to teach you something about democracy. We're going to teach you something about justice. We can build on your words. We on the ground. You see, just keep track of us. Emmett Till's mother, my God, my God, my God. Where you get that spiritual strength to look your baby right in the face with the coffin open in Robert's Temple Church of God in Christ, the west side of Chicago, in August of 1955. Miss Till, where'd you get it when you looked in the camera and said, I don't have a minute to hate, I will pursue justice for the rest of my life? You didn't do that by yourself, Miss Till. Something went into you. Some grandparents and some coaches and some ministers and some teachers shaped your soul in such a way that you could still be in quest for not revenge but justice. Oh, we need that now, because the whole world has got the blues, and the whole world will not survive if that world doesn't learn something from a blues people. But the blues people can't forget their own memories, because if it's zeroes in just on the present, the repetition of the present, instant gratification, fleeting pleasures, then you're never able to experience joy. And so much of American culture is a joyless quest for pleasure. Insatiable, never get enough. We wonder why the younger generation wrestling with spiritual blackout and nihilism. I ask young people all the time, can you imagine sustaining your soul based on the music that's been written and produced since 2002? Lord have mercy. That thin stuff. I mean, you got Jill Scott and Andrew Stone and Anthony Hamilton. You got something trying to sustain it. Lila Hathaway. I mean, I'm not saying the young generation doesn't have it. Deja's a wonderful artist. She knows what I'm talking about because she parted of this great tradition in the midst of the blackout. Cutting against the grain. That's the challenge. And then we're ready to look the 1% in the face and say, we know you own 42% of the wealth. We know that in the last 4 years, you have received 100% of the income growth as working people's wages have stagnated, as trade unions are pushed to the edges. We know about the debasement of work. We know that the outsourcing. We know that the dominant tendencies of neoliberal capitalist America is to financialize, privatize, and to militarize, all three at the same time. We know that 25 years ago, the multinational corporations had twice as many, had nearly 35% of the profits, and now the banks have almost 40% of the profits, which means that we shifted from a monopoly capitalism where we had at least corporations that produce products. Now we got a highly financialized monopoly capitalism where they're not producing products, they produce deals for hedge fund folk, and those deals do not trickle down, so Wall Street can break dance all they want. There's no translation on the ground for everyday people, for concrete folk. And we got politicians already extensions of, subordinate to, both parties subordinate to the oligarchs and the plutocrats. Republicans too often mean-spirited when it comes to poor people. Democrats too often milquetoast when it comes to poor people. Where do poor people go? But both parties being colonized by big money. I'm told that Brother Barack was in San Francisco just yesterday. He had time to come to San Francisco, didn't have time to go to Ferguson, did he? Interesting. Well, he's a president, he's got a complicated life. Okay. No, with Tim Geithner and Larry Summers, it was clear that he was leaning toward Wall Street rather than homeowners. You see. And it was very clear with the drones dropping bombs on innocent, precious children in Somalia and Yemen and Pakistan that Martin King was turning over in his grave. Because an innocent child anywhere is a crime against humanity. And the national surveillance, keeping track, phones, rights, liberties, 4 Americans assassinated, no due process, no judicial review. That's movement toward a police state. It's crypto-fascist. And I'm deeply libertarian. People have a right to be wrong. I fight for Brother Rush Limbaugh to be wrong all day. We just got to put hard pressure on that brother as he break dances to the bank. Causes too much damage. But he's still a human being. Keep track of his humanity. That's what the black prophetic tradition at its best is about. And I salute each and every one of you dealing with the raw stuff as you proceed to becoming not just activists in the narrow sense, but human beings who love and care, especially for the weak and vulnerable, as you zero in on the new Jim Crow, as you zero in on wealth and income inequality. I started on a Socratic note. I want to end on a blue note. Because I think it's impossible to be a human being, and it's certainly impossible to be a Christian with the cross sitting at the very center of who we are, that unarmed truth and unconditional love that cross symbolizes, without having a blues sensibility. B.B. King says, nobody loves me but my mama, and she might be jiving too. She might be jiving too. I'm not talking about my precious mama. Oh, no, she take a bullet for me. I take a bullet for her. And I'm not a pacifist. Anybody mess with her, I'm throwing down. But B.B. King was talking about catastrophe. And the challenge is New Jim Crow, catastrophe. Income inequality, catastrophe. Do we have the Socratic courage to learn how to die and critically examine who we are in relation to that catastrophe so we can leave the world a little better than we found it? And at the same time, from black folk back to the tie of justice and tenderness and sweetness and gentleness, do we have what it takes to reach out based on our ROOTS and proceed with ROUTES, to be international, to be global, even as we are rooted in the best of our traditions. That's the blue sensibility. That's where the love of truth, love of neighbor, love of enemy, love of community, but also acknowledging the ways in which we all fall short. Thank you all so very much. We'll have a good time for questions. Oh, thank you all very much. Very patient indeed. Brother Ryan, I want to thank you, brother. I want to thank you for the work you did. Brother Ryan Lamberton.
Thank you, Dr. West. Thank you. So at this time, it's a question and answer period. We have a microphone right here and one on the right side of the room. And we invite you to line up at the microphone. Please ask a question, and Dr. West will answer. If you're in the overflow room and would like to join us at this time to ask a question, we welcome you to this space.
Please do not hesitate.
Hello. Dr. West, in my experiences at this college, I have seen what might be a sense of guilt or a fear of culpability that deters some white or male or heterosexual, heteronormative people from embracing minority studies and from thinking critically about the dynamics of power in our nation's history and the history of the world. So is this feeling of guilt or a fear of culpability legitimate, and what would you say to the people who feel this way?
Appreciate that question, though, brother. I know we had a wonderful dialogue earlier, too. It's good to see you again. Now, I think guilt too often is a paralyzing experience, and the last thing we need of anybody is paralysis. Courage is all about looking fear in the face and trying to work through it, trying to overcome fear. All of us wrestle with insecurity, anxiety, and fear, but the question is whether we're able to work through it. When you talk about minority studies or black studies, women's studies, and Latino studies, indigenous peoples, and so forth, we have to keep in mind that these categories, this disciplinary division of knowledge, ought not to obscure the quest for truth. See, the institution of higher learning is about the quest for truth. Now, if somebody comes along and says, well, I'm not that interested in truth, then that's a different kind of dialogue, you see? So you say, oh, I want to talk about American history, don't want to say about anything about indigenous peoples. Well, how are you going to have American history without the land? See what I mean? How are you going to have American history without labor? Who do you think built the railroads? Irish, Chinese, African slaves, new immigrants from Europe, and so forth and so on. It's a question of truth. We know that we're talking about truth, small t, so it's changing all the time in terms of being open to revision. But I think the discourse must be cast in such a way that you say the fundamental mission of any institution of higher learning is a quest for truth, small t, knowledge, small k, and then the shaping of character. Sign of faith. Oh, it's a motto. How that faith feeds into the shaping of a certain kind of person, you see. Now, if persons say then, well, they're only interested in certain kinds of truth or a selective reading of the truth, then there's a certain intellectual honesty that follows that from. You say, oh, I see. So when it comes to peoples of color, all of a sudden you think that is not a serious inquiry regarding the quest for truth? But when you talk about Europe, somehow they have a monopoly on the serious quest? No! This is a human thing. It cuts across the board. And that's precisely, I think, what that paideia, that in the deep sense, is all about. We have to be open to that quest for truth, which takes us in very unpredictable and surprising places. And that's true for all of us. So that's the beginning of a question. You want to be able to shatter the guilt and acknowledge that, yes, it's ugly, it's been barbaric, it's been bestial, it's been brutal, but that's most of human history. Barbarism, brutality, bestiality. And we out-compete the lions and tigers when it comes to bestiality, because oftentimes slices of humanity find gratuitous pleasure in cruelty in the way in which the lions and tigers seem not. I haven't talked to lions and tigers, so I can't fundamentally confirm that, but it looks like to me they just stop the cruelty when they actually get full. So they got real utility. And yes, go right ahead.
How you doing, Dr. West? Thank you for your time. There was a time when hip-hop was the voice of the black community, when it really spoke, you know, Eric B. and Rakim, Boogie Down Productions, yeah. Public Enemy.
Absolutely.
And now the state of hip-hop is so different now. And how can we, as adults, continue to make sure that hip-hop still speaks to the roots, as you used the term earlier, right, and how it's, you know, become so misogynistic and all these other things. And I'm not dissing those brothers and sisters, but how do we help the artists get back to the roots where hip-hop came from?
It's a good and wonderful question. One is, of course, we have to look at the conditions under which production, consumption, and distribution takes place. That's the fundamental things. The same oligarchs, the same monopolies who control recording and radio and video and performance, you see. And so the point I was making before about why we don't have delphonics, dramatics, enchantment, and so forth, because the elites at the top, they don't like the notion of black men and women who are young with tremendous style, dignity, and creativity, creating things together. You see, that might prefigure a movement. Just keep them isolated, one aggressive voice with a microphone. You see, and then try to police in some way what they have to say. Keep it G-string, you know. Narrow. Now there are some open. I mean, you got, you know, what's the lyrical genius down from New Orleans? Is Lil Wayne, the brother with a lot of tattoos. You know, when he talks about Katrina, he got something to say.
Right, right.
But that's 1 out of 100 songs. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Why? Because he's been shaped in such a way that he knows what will be played, what will gain access, what will have honorific status. And so if he goes the route of a Curtis Mayfield, a Gil Scott-Heron, a Nina Simone, we can go on and on, a Donny Hathaway, a Roberta Flack, all across the way, you see, they're going to be performing Friday night at the Poetry Jam. Broke of the 10 Commandments financially. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
And so it's a whole industry. It's not just our young people. Our young people have tremendous talent and creativity, and they're hungry for the great landmarks. You see, but it's hard for them to be able to sustain themselves. So first thing we got to do is support the artists who are trying to move in that direction, and then tell the truth about the system and the way in which those artists who are benefiting need to be lovingly rendered accountable.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Definitely. Appreciate that, though. Yes, go right ahead.
Can I?
My dear brother.
Peace, brother. How you doing?
How you doing, my brother?
My name is Destiny Woma. I'm a senior at UC Berkeley studying American Studies with a concentration in race, education, and public policy. And I just want to thank you for your presence as a black male, as someone I could listen to, look up to. I've been looking up to you since my junior year in high school when you spoke at UCLA, so I appreciate you for that.
Oh, all right.
And,
you from LA?
I'm from Pasadena, California.
Oh, right on, right on. Pasadena in the house, Pasadena in the house.
Yeah, and I'm organizing with a coalition called Ignite. It stands for Invest in Graduations, Not Incarceration, Transform Education. And we're students at the University of California, across the University of California, who are organizing to address the school-to-prison pipeline, the prison industrial complex. And as a leader, just organizing different groups of people, my experience at Berkeley organizing, I'm realizing, trying to figure out how to really create have a multicultural coalition that's organizing is working. Although being multicultural or trying to bring those different organizations together, we're affected by the system differently in different ways. We kind of like go into these systems of education or prison, and we come out affected differently, right?
Yes,
but I'm trying to figure out with those differences, we are still fighting the same battle, but how do we keep that in mind in the forefront as we're organizing? I just want to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, ooh, that's a profound question, my brother. Profound question. Definitely. You know, you look very similar to my namesake, Cornel West.
For real?
Both of y'all handsome brothers, but I looked up and said, Lord, look like Cornel for a minute. I said, right on, right on. Isn't that true, though, Mom? Didn't you think that true?
Oh, really?
I said, Lord, good God, we take this brother home. Oh, Lord. But not against your will, but I'm just here. But I know the question you raised is so important. One is magnificent, you're coming together. You got coalitions. This is so crucial because of the divide and conquer strategy from above, trying to keep people somehow isolated in silos, as it were. And the second thing is, I think you got the crucial issues because there's no doubt that the new Jim Crow, you all know Michelle Alexander's great classical text, very important, is one of the fundamental lenses through which we must look at American society if we're going to accent the best of American society. Now, you probably remember I was there with Carl Dix just a couple of years ago, and we had a great time at UC Berkeley. And he and I, of course, have called for October, this month of resistance, stop mass incarceration that we've been pushing, and he's going to be there as well with me. And he's my very, very dear brother, and this is part of a national aim to try to bring in young folk to wake up, to shatter the sleepwalking. So I think that this kind of self-critical activity, self-scrutiny that you're talking about, in dialogue with others, because it takes on a life of its own when you're in dialogue with others, because you're hearing voices that you wouldn't ordinarily hear, and you have to respond with responses you don't ordinarily give. And so I just salute you. And you were part of the conference as well? Is that right?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Fantastic. Salute you, though, brother. Definitely. Take good care. Take good care. I'll try to be a little short. I see we got a long line.
Hi, my name is Ursi. I currently go here, and I'm, in Justice and Community and Leadership, TFT track, which is Teach for Tomorrow.
Wonderful. And which year here at St. Mary?
I'm a sophomore.
Sophomore.
So in one of your voices, it's called Courage, you say, it takes courage to interrogate yourself. It takes courage to look in the mirror and see past your reflection to who you really are. When you take off the mask, you're not performing the same old routine and social roles. It takes courage to ask, how do I become so well adjusted to injustice? It takes courage to cut against the grain and become nonconformist. It takes courage to wake up and stay awake instead of engaging in complacent slumber. It takes courage to shatter conformity and cowardice. Who was your target audience? Because I feel like it was like African Americans and others who are like not aware of breaking the chains of psychological slavery.
No, I think you read that well. You read, I'm not talking about read the words well, you read the meaning well. That's what I'm talking about. You read the meaning well.
Thank you.
That's what I mean. You hit the nail on the head. Let me put it that way.
Thank you.
That's exactly who I had in mind. But you can see, though, it's linked to precisely what you have is that fire. There's people who are candidates of moving from lukewarm status to fire. You probably know a genius named Walter Hawkins. He wrote a song called What Is This? Yeah. What is this? I feel so deep inside. What is this that sets my soul on fire? Yeah. I don't know what it is, but it won't let me hold my peace. You keep that fire, because that courage is tied to that fire. And that fire and courage is for every human being. It's for every human being. There's something inside of it that won't let you hold your peace, that you want to be better. There's excess, is what the great William James called that something more. That's something more that lures us in some way out of our own dust, earth-bound, clay feet-driven existence, you see. That's what we're after. And so I salute you. And you're absolutely right. That's the audience I had in mind. Oh, indeed. Now, of course, what the response will be, always an open question. You put the words out there. You know, T.S. Eliot says, ours is in the trying, the rest is not our business. Because none of us are messiahs. We're not in control. We're not fully dictating anything. We're bearing witness to the best of our ability and then we pass it on to the next generation.
Thank you.
You so much, my dear sister. Yes. Go ahead.
So I've been following you for a long time, and one of the most profound things I've heard you say, you were on an interview with Toni Morrison, and y'all were talking about the passion, and you were talking about how you're not a Constantinian Christian, and what it means for you to understand Christianity for its true roots and not the domesticated manifestation of Christianity. And so I wanted to ask you to expound on that, particularly for the U.S. right now in this place and time, and in light of Ferguson and some of the other realities that are going on. What does it mean for us to reclaim Christianity from an undomesticated perspective?
Ooh, yes. No, indeed. Appreciate that question. See, for me, Christian faith is about a radical love that requires a leap of faith so that you're in the world but not of the world, that you allow yourself to be a blessing and thereby be transformative to those you interact with, allowing them to attempt to find their voice, because they have exactly the same status in the eyes of a mighty God that you do, no matter how highly you think of yourself, or I think of myself, whatever. You see what I mean? So that Constantinian Christianity for me was an imperial form that generated sensibilities within the Christian tradition in which Christians too often became accommodating to empire. They became well adjusted to injustice and became well adapted to indifference. You see, and can you imagine that Palestinian Jew in the temple running out the money changers, loving every person, touching the garment? Stop, I got to somehow make connection with who touched me, because I am involved in a ministry of free healing and common eating. Free healing, anybody. Common eating. Forget the hierarchy of the cuisine where the rich only eat one kind of food and the poor only eat another. Come to this meal and you have the same status as everybody else. Oh, that's that Palestinian Jew named Jesus. Oh my God. Ooh, it's a joy. A joy that the world didn't give you and the world can't take away. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, Lasallian brothers know what I'm talking about too. Oh, yes they do. Oh, indeed. Yes, indeed. We Black Baptists ain't got no monopoly on all this good stuff. Oh, no. Go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Madison, and I go here. You talked a lot about, like, the honesty, virtue, decency, integrity, which Socrates, like, believes that you gain those throughout your years. And then you talked about love, which I feel like you ingrained that when your early years, like your parents kind of force that upon you. Well, they don't force it upon you, but they like push it upon you. So I was slightly confused about how society and communities have like manipulated love, and how can we change that?
Yes, well, I'll tell you that. That's a complicated question because there's a lot of steps there, you know.
Yeah.
Because when we say society, anytime you're talking about society, you're talking about a society that has a history.
Yeah.
And all the different societies have very different histories. There's certain commonalities, but they have different histories. But we have to be able to tell a story, analysis as well as a narrative of various kinds of societies. So when I made certain gestures to America, and I was saying something like, well, America strikes one as a hotel civilization, which is a fusion of the market and the home. It's obsessed with market. It views home as a way to escape. The home historically has been a patriarchal home, right? So yet women's potential call into question. And the market is all about energy to make money.
Okay.
Period. Well, where will love be manifest? Well, it'll be manifest in the home. How will it be sustained once it hits the market? Where survival of the slickest, survival of the fittest. Oftentimes the competition trumps the cooperation. The deep perception of each other as not just estranged and alienated, but persons to be dominated as opposed to communion, communing with others. And how does that translation from love that is often encountered, you hope, in home? And I'm not being naive or idealistic about home. There's some homes where they don't have a whole lot of love. And that's understandable, and that's ugly. It's alien to my own experience, but that's ugly. But then you find it somewhere else. with friends, and sometimes, of course, it's just a matter of the arts themselves. I mean, we've got so many young people that are unloved, uncared for, and unattended to, and the only thing they think that loves them is the music. And they escaped in the music. That's it. You see? That's it. Now, that is almost like B.B. King's condition. All forces against them. Where would they learn how to love? And then you got the Hamlet condition, who've probably the most sophisticated literary protagonist in all of Western literature, who suffers from the inability to love. That's deep. Dostoevsky defined hell as those who suffer from the inability to love. Now, what does that mean? It means that they've been treated so coldly, their hearts become so hardened that they resist any attempt to open themselves, take a risk, and be vulnerable. There is no love without taking a risk and being vulnerable. I mean, Bootsy Collins and I wrote a song on his Funk Capital of the World called When Love is a Threat. When Love is a Threat. And we were talking in some ways about some of the young folk that we've encountered in our travels together, where they've been so hardened that when love comes their way, it's so alien, they don't know what to do with it. Right. I mean, a lot of brothers actually experience that with sisters. When they find a sister who really loves them, they don't know what to do, because they've been in the manipulation, domination business for so long. And see, when you find somebody who loves you, they're not going to be dominated now. They want you. They want the real thing. You say, God Almighty, this is a new thing. That's right, it is a new thing. You better open yourself, or you're going to miss out on something rich. And I'm not talking about nobody in this room, but I mean, there's some challenges out here. You go right here.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Huey, and thank you for being here at the Leadership and Social Justice Conference. And so I want to talk about leadership. And part of leadership is action. And so my question is, what actions in pursuit of justice actually make a difference, truly make a difference? Is it having a hard face-to-face conversation, a hard Facebook conversation? Because we get a lot of that around here. Mm-hmm. Is it protests? Is it a demonstration like the tradition we have at St. Mary's of the chapel lawn fast and tent cities on the chapel lawn and the chapel? Excuse me. Is it donating money to fund the movement? Is it education? Is it being privileged enough to interrupt the president to speak truth to power? Those are just a few examples, but I would like to hear from you what you think makes a difference.
Oh, I appreciate that question. What I was going to say all of them until you got to that last one.
Whether it's the president here.
No, but absolutely. But no, I think the president would recognize to be true to Lasallian tradition and to be true to the Christian tradition, he would want to be accountable, answerable, and responsible. You simply want it done in such a way that you don't trump his possibilities and lose sight of his humanity. But absolutely, that's part of the conversation. Is that right, though, brother? That's part of the conversation, that's part of the dialogue, that's part of the interaction. But I think that the important thing is to don't think that somehow there's only one dominant mode of activism. A lot of times people say, well, I'm an activist, only means you're going to jail. No. John Coltrane was an activist. You see, Toni Morrison is an activist. You can't read her text and not be transformed at that deep sense of paideia. That's part of a certain kind of activism. You see, you've read Thomas Merton, you know about Daniel Berrigan and others. They move from different kinds of activism. But the important thing is, of course, is it's headed toward some common good that will somehow make the world more just. And I think especially as a student, it's important to have a sense of context. That it'd be difficult to be a freshman at St. Mary's and think that you're ready for the vanguard of the revolution. No, you better do your homework. You got to get ready. You got to be prepared. You see what I mean? And what has happened, I think, among the younger generation, given the fact that you can actually be highly successful without too much talent. It's like a lot of the artists these days who make millions of dollars and can't sing in tune. It's true. Sarah Vaughan turns over, Frank Sinatra turns over in their graves. Because success is not predicated on great talent, it's predicated on your PR activity, it's predicated on whether you become a reality show personality and all this other mess. You see. And so the question there becomes, how then do you connect your actions of various sorts with what we started with Du Bois? the integrity, honesty, decency, and virtue. You see what I'm saying? This is what I salute the work you're doing here, though, very much so. Yeah, go right ahead.
Hi, Dr. West.
Yeah,
I have a question. I'm a UC Berkeley student, and as many of us know, it's the 50th anniversary of the free speech movement.
Yes.
And even though it's this anniversary, we have an administration that's expert at accommodating to empire. We have an administration that's expert at brutalizing students, as has happened a couple of years ago, only in our recent memory, but unfortunately forgotten already. And my question to you is, when this administration is brutalizing students and trying to tame resistance, like some students we have here, what kinds of strategies can we use to free the radical imagination, to transcend this fear and raise some hell?
Yes, wonderful question, wonderful question. Definitely. I'm glad you brought up Mario Salvio and some of the others, 50 years ago, the tremendous courage of the student. You see how Berkeley has undergone fundamental transformation since then. My brother, who went to UC Berkeley and set the mile record as a freshman, graduated with distinguished sensibilities and insights and perceptions. He was there in the middle of it all, and so he passes it on to yourself. But anytime you have that kind of critique of a person in power, you want to be able to both, as I said before, render them accountable. But if it doesn't work internally, you bring in people from the outside who are willing to engage in dialogue, willing to engage in conversation, and willing to engage in protest if necessary to ensure that this kind of behavior is not in any way routinized and normalized in an institution like UC Berkeley. And so, you just give me a call, though, brother. I'd love to be a part of such a team to render. I'd have to know much more. I don't know about UC Berkeley, just like I don't know that much about St. Mary's. I hear voices here and there and so forth, and I'll try to learn and what have you. But we have to be willing to cut across institutions. It can't just be UC Berkeley. It's got to be community, state, Stanford, Chicago, networks. You see. And that's very much, you all talked about networks, is that right, the day in the conference? Across school and so forth and so on. See, that's exactly what we're after. And to reach out to faculty. Because you'd be surprised how many faculty would agree and be willing to step out. I mean, there's always, conformist and cowardly faculty, just like there's conformist and cowardly anything. Well, see, universities are not sites that put a premium on courage. They put a premium on smartness. So there is a difference. Let the phones be smart, we be wise, compassionate, courageous. There is a difference. There is a difference. Big difference. Appreciate it.
We have time for one more question. On this side.
Hi, Dr. West.
How are you doing, my dear sister?
I am very good. So Martin Luther King Jr. in his letter from Birmingham jail talks a lot about just versus unjust laws.
Yeah.
And my question for you is, do you think laws alone can improve our nation's structural inequalities, or do we need, to quote MLK, go beyond the superficial analyst who looks merely at effects and grapple with underlying causes?
Appreciate that question, too. You're a student here at St. Mary's,
yes,
too?
Yes, I am.
That's all right. Good God, man. No, I think that legal reform is an integral part of any change in a society. It's just that legal reforms do have their limits. You see, I'm a revolutionary Christian, so I'm not a liberal. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat, and so forth. I try not to fit within the prevailing categories of not just society, but the world. And therefore, I try to learn from different traditions. I learn from conservative brothers and sisters. You hear all the talk today about tradition. You see a lot of conservative brothers and sisters say, oh, I like that Brother West. He talks about tradition. I'm a traditionalist to the core. I just come in my corner. No, I'm not a traditionalist defender of tradition. I appeal to a tradition which has subversive memories. I appeal to a tradition that has a witness of integrity that cuts against the grain, but it's still tradition. I believe in the centrality of traditions, you see. And so in that sense, I can learn from conservative thinkers who think about tradition. They just have traditionalist understandings of tradition, and I have much more subversive, resistance-centered conceptions of tradition, like the 6 in that book, or like beginning with Mom. You see, I mean, she's older than me, you know what I mean? She's part of a tradition. Is that right, Mom? Exactly. But in the end, you need more than laws changed. You need structures changed. But you also need souls changed. You need characters changed. You need perceptions changed. And so then that's where you get to the coming together as the spiritual and the social, the existential and the economic, the personal and the political. It's a whole affair in that regard. Now you got my dear brother behind you. I know he's a revolutionary communist like I'm a revolutionary Christian. And we work together. And we have wonderful fun together. Carl Dix and Barbara Vacan and the other people say, well, Brother West, why are you spending time with those revolutionary communists? I love them when they loving poor people. Now, if he's a revolutionary communist, I'm a revolutionary Christian, somebody's wrong on something. We struggle over the God question and so forth and so on. We struggle over the history of communism, what have you. But people who are willing to love poor people and working people and oppressed people and try to fundamentally transform new Jim Crow, you're going to run up with a whole lot of different kind of folk. You're going to have some anarchists right next to you. So you on the love train? Yeah, uh-huh. No. Right? You're going to have some precious Jewish brothers and sisters in the name of Amos right there. Well, Jesus has a different status for you. That's right. And the Jewish brothers and sisters say, you know, we got some other Jewish candidates if you get tired of Jesus. We got Hillel. We got some other ones now. No, I'll take Jesus. You get some Buddhists like Bell Hooks, revolutionary Buddhists. There's going to be some Hindus like Gandhi. And the brother who just won the Nobel Prize, right? Even though he began as a Marxist. Interesting move from Marxism to left. So that we have to be open. Of course, you're always going to have secular, agnostic, atheistic folk. Because most atheists say what? All gods are idols. Whereas we prophetic folks say most gods are idols. We have a strong anti-idolatrous orientation in the prophetic tradition. You see, and that's very important. We just think there's a God of love and justice that we're willing to serve, unlike my dear brother Bill Maher, who says every talk about God makes him go for his pocket and his gun. And I said, I know some atheists that make me go for my pocket and my gun. So don't put that just on religious folk.
Thank you, Dr. West. Let's give a big round of applause for Dr. Cornel West. Let's give it up. So at this time, I would like to invite the SMC Gold Medal Choir back to the stage to perform one final song. They will perform their rendition of Shambhala by Three Dog Night. In more ways than one, this song captures the spirit of this entire day and the keynote presentation. If you are interested in having a book signed by Dr. West, please line up at the left side, right here at the left side of the stage as soon as the choir finishes their song. Thank you. Good night. God bless you all.
Wash away my troubles, wash away my pain with the rain and Shambhala. Wash away my sorrow, wash away my shame with the rain and Shambhala.
Cause everyone is lucky, everyone is kind on the road to Shambhala. Everyone's so happy, everyone is so kind on the road to Shambhala.
Tell my sister by the flowers in her eyes on the road to Shambhala. I can tell my brother by the flowers in his eyes on the road to Shambhala.